Have you ever found yourself going back to the same ex over and over and over again, even though you break up and like you try to do something new, but then you just end up with the same ex that you keep going back to over and over again? Or maybe you manage to fucking split away from that person, but then you just find yourself in relationships with people that are exactly like them. And you're marveled at the way that you can attract these motherfuckers into your life. Well, that's probably happening because you have an addiction to toxic relationships. So if this sounds like you, I've got 5 reasons why you're addicted to toxic relationships. What up, everybody? Welcome back to Operation Moksha. As always, I'm your host, Chris Roscoe, and today we're going to be going over 5 reasons why you are addicted to toxic relationships. And this is going to be really fun because I've experienced pretty much all of these, so I'm going to be talking from direct experience, and you're probably going to see yourself in at least a couple of these, maybe fucking all of them, so this should be really interesting. The 5 main pieces that I'm going to go over, I'm going to give you a brief idea of what they are first. The first one is the number one reason most people get addicted to dysfunctional relationships and toxic sex and all that sort of shit is because you just straight up, you don't believe you deserve better. Obviously, this one's fairly on the nose, but I'm going to go much deeper into it. And the second one is going to be that these toxic relationships, because you don't deserve you believe better, they actually soothe really deep wounds that you may not even know that you have. This is what makes them particularly addicting. And this is the part that you may not even be aware of, so I'm going to go much deeper into this later. The third reason is kind of funny, but at the same time, it's like anybody who's been there, you know what the fuck I'm talking about. When you are stuck in a toxic relationship, either one of you or both of you can often get into this thing where you fuck like you are trying to prove that you deserve to exist on this planet as a human being. And there's a certain level of just passion and enthusiasm and just a certain I don't know what that you bring to sex when you're fucking like you're trying to prove that you deserve to exist. So let's acknowledge that for its own thing. And the fourth one, which is honestly one of the biggest one that keeps people stuck from really branching out, is the identity shift. Because when you are someone who doesn't believe they deserve good things and gets hardwired into these certain patterns, it's a pretty big fucking shift to go from being the person that doesn't believe or doesn't deserve the good things to being the person who does deserve the good things. And there's a middle ground there that's really fucking challenging. I'm gonna go into that a little bit later, but that could be what you're dealing with. And the very last one, which nobody likes to think that they're doing this, but a lot of people are doing this. One of the main reasons you get addicted to toxic relationships is because you get to fix somebody else so that you don't have to look at your own shit. Now, obviously, there's other reasons why you might be getting locked into these dynamics. It's complicated. We're humans. There's unlimited reasons for this. But these are the 5 reasons that I've personally experienced and coached a lot of people through that have made it very difficult for them to either acknowledge that they're in a toxic situation or once they have acknowledged it, to get out and create something new. So now I'm going to be going into these 5 different reasons on a little bit of a deeper level. Okay, so the first one is probably the most obvious and probably the easiest to explain, and it's just straight up that you don't believe that you deserve better. And this is kind of tricky on a lot of different reasons because if you are someone who's been into shadow integration for a long time, this probably makes intuitive sense to you. But if you're not someone who's been practicing shadow integration or anything like that, this might be a foreign concept to you, so I'm going to kind of explain to you how all this works. So your mind doesn't really give a shit if you're happy. That's not what it's built for. Your mind doesn't give a shit if you're thriving, if you're successful, if you're having healthy relationships, if you have good money and blah, blah. Your mind doesn't give a shit. Your mind is designed only to keep you alive in an environment that you understand and can predict and know how to engage in. So when you have programmed your mind to think that you are a certain kind of person that deserves certain kinds of things and is capable of certain kinds of things, that kind of rule book ends up getting hardwired into your system. So if you think that you are the type of person that doesn't deserve love, maybe you think you're unlovable, maybe you did something as a little kid or somebody treated you in a certain way and you got the idea that you don't deserve to be loved or that love is dangerous or blah, 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 whatever it might be. If you are the type of person who doesn't believe that they deserve good things or that they are worthy and deserving of love, you will literally look at the perfect person. You may have met your soulmate or whatever, but if you don't think you are worthy and deserving of love, they won't even fucking register to you. You won't even see them. This is how the mind works. There's some cool studies that have been done on this on YouTube, where there is this experiment that they do where they have you watch a bunch of people pass a bunch of basketballs or one basketball back and forth, right? And they're like, okay, count how many times the basketball gets counted. And you're sitting there and you're counting the fucking basketball and you're like, look at me, I'm doing a good job. I counted the basketball. And then when the experiment's over, they're like, okay, great. And you think they're gonna ask you, how many times did they pass the basketball? But instead they ask you, did you notice the gorilla in the background? And this is where it really fucks you, because you won't even know there's a gorilla. And there's a giant dude in a gorilla suit who comes in the background and starts dancing and waving around, clearly in view, but because you've told yourself that you're gonna look at the basketball and count the basketball, you negatively hallucinate it. You don't even see it. When you watch it again, you're like, how the fuck did I miss that? But that's how the brain works. You take in so much information on any given moment that your brain can only focus on what you tell it to focus on. So if you tell your brain, these are the kinds of experiences I can have, these are the types of experiences I can't have, these are the things I can allow into my reality, so on and so forth, your brain will negatively hallucinate anything that doesn't fit into the rule book that you've given it. So if you tell yourself, I only deserve bad things that hurt me, and all the good things that would make me feel happy and loved and satisfied and fulfilled, all those things are bad, don't show me those, your brain is incapable of showing you. So you could see opportunity in front of you. You could see the love of your life right in front of you. You could see everything you want. But if you don't see yourself as worthy and deserving of that, you will literally negatively hallucinate it. And this is why so many people will wake up years later being like, wait a minute, that person was flirting with me. Because the signs will be there, but you can negatively hallucinate it to the point where somebody can be dropping you really easy hints, but because you don't think you're worthy of it, or because it's just not a part of your worldview, you simply can't let it in. So this is why it's really important to make sure that you actually know what you want out of a relationship and that you feel like it's something you can have. You feel like you're worthy of it, you feel like you're deserving of it, you feel like it's out there, that it can find you, that you can find it. All these different things, your belief system has to be in order for you to actually attract this, otherwise you will negatively hallucinate it. Or you'll do what a lot of other people do, is where you'll find something really good, but then you'll find a way to mess it up. Because you identify as the person who messes things up, or you identify as the person who is alone or isn't worthy of love or whatever. So your mind works to create a reality that's a match for that. Whereas if you switch your beliefs and you start believing that you're worthy of love and that you're amazing and that everything that you want is right at your fingertips and all that sort of shit, your mind will create a very different reality. So the number one thing that people do is they think they're not deserving of the things that they really want. So instead, they try and make things work in the pool of the things that aren't really good for them. They end up getting with other people that think that they are not worthy and deserving of love, and they themselves think they're not worthy and deserving of love. And so what do you think happens when two people who don't think that they deserve to be loved and deserve to have good things come together? I'm not gonna spell that one out, it's pretty fucking clear. And so that's the pattern that a lot of other people get into, and so you can kind of see what's wrong there. So as soon as you start believing that you're worthy and deserving of really good things, you become a different kind of person, you start attracting different kinds of people, you start creating different kinds of experiences, and a whole new reality and identity and worldview starts to get hardwired in your mind as a result. So that's the first one. So for the second one, this one is a little bit harder to notice. Actually, that's a lie. It's a lot harder to notice. In fact, most people that I coach through breakups or relationships, stuff like this, aren't even aware of this as a concept, let alone the specific details of what's actually going on in their minds. So I'm gonna give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So these relationships soothe deep wounds that you might not even be aware of, right? Because a lot of people aren't necessarily aware of their beliefs. And a lot of them aren't aware of their beliefs about specific situations and how they create certain circumstances in their lives. And I'll get more detailed, trust me, this will make sense. So when you are the type of person that we talked about in the first one, where you don't believe that you're worthy of good things, right? Like for the longest time, I blamed myself for my dad's death, because that's what little kids do when bad things happen that they don't understand, they blame themselves. My dad died when I was a little kid, so I thought it was my fault. So as a result, I told myself that I was a bad person and that I deserved to be abandoned and blah, 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 blah. So as a result, I would see all the people that I thought would be good for me and all those sorts of things, but I didn't think I deserved them. So I had to pick from the people that I thought I deserved, which are not the best in the world, but that's what you do. You do what you can. And so as a result of that, even though these aren't the people that are really good for you, they find a way to validate and soothe the parts of you that feel like you're unworthy of love. And you end up doing the same for them. This is why trauma bonds are a thing, because you get into these dynamics where you have opposing trauma, right? Like this is also why the narcissist and empath thing that everybody seems to think is a really big deal. This is why this happens. Is because on one side of the polarity, let's use this narcissist empath thing as an example of this. The narcissist is somebody who really believes really shitty things about themselves, but overcompensates by believing really positive things. They believe they're unworthy of love, they believe they're trash, they believe they're terrible, and they hate that, so instead of living that way, they overcompensate and tell themselves that they're fucking amazing and wonderful, and that's where you get narcissism, or at least one version of it. And then on the other side, you get this like empath, right, who doesn't have that overcompensation thing. All they have is the, I think I'm a shit and I don't deserve good things, and blah, 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 blah. They're two sides of the same coin, but one is at least pretending to be powerful. One is pretending to be a badass. One is pretending to be charismatic, and they get really good at it because it's a survival mechanism that's the only way they can get through the reality. So they get really fucking good at this. And so both people are wounded. Both people are kind of broken in a sense. It's not that they can't be fixed, but it's just that they're believing really shitty things about themselves. So they come in, and then you see one person being really charismatic and one person really being sweet and caring, but they are each other's shadow. Like the empathetic person wishes they were strong and powerful and charismatic and all that sorts of shit. And the other person secretly wishes they were a little bit more, empathetic and caring and loving and grounded and able to connect with people a little bit better and have deep, meaningful relationships. They're two sides of the same coin. So when they get together, they soothe these wounds. You get to have access to your opposite side. If you're the meek and weak and quiet one, you get to have somebody who's strong and charismatic and all sorts of things caring about you, treating you like you matter. Whereas if you are the narcissistic kind of person, which is, I've been on both sides of this and they both suck, but from my experiences, when you're the narcissistic one, you kind of suck, like deep down, you kind of suck, and you're looking for something to make you feel like you don't suck, which is why you overcompensate, and it's why you do all these things, and that's why narcissists do a lot of things that they do, because they're just really don't want to accept the fact that they think they suck. And so what they'll do is they'll find somebody who's this like empathic person who's just like so loving and so adoring and so they just worship the fucking ground you walk on. And so you're getting your needs met of feeling like you're the most important person in the world, and they're getting their needs met of getting this secondhand power and charisma and feeling like someone's looking out for them and all these sorts of things. But all it is them getting their emotional needs met through each other instead of meeting those emotional needs themselves. And that's really fucking difficult to deal with because most people don't know that this is even happening. And every single time you get into a trauma bond and every single time you get into an unhealthy relationship dynamic that is a pattern that consists, it's because that person is soothing some wound that you probably don't even know that you have. So this one's really hard to break because you have to get really honest with yourself. You really have to fucking own that, like, if I'm doing something, especially if it's a pattern, if it happens more than twice, right? Like if you have a bad relationship, then it's like, okay, cool, everybody has bad relationships. But if you get in a second bad relationship that's exactly the same as the first, then it's like, well, okay, is this a pattern? And then if you get into a third, it's like you just fucking bet it's a pattern. And so if you're in a pattern, you really have to acknowledge and be honest with yourself and be like, all right, I'm choosing this on some level. If this has happened 3 times in a row, some part of me wants this. And so you really have to get honest about that and really sincerely ask yourself, what am I getting out of this? What wounds does this person soothe? What part of my personality that I keep repressed do I get access to as a result of hanging out with this other person? Do they allow me to feel like, are they so sweet and kind and loving that they allow me to feel like I must be a good person because they love me? I've done that before. Is it possible that I feel so weak and broken inside that their power and their charisma makes me feel stronger than I normally would on my own? I've also been there. Both suck. And this is just one example. There's a million different ways this can show up, but as a general idea, it's usually 2 sides of the same coin trying to come to each other and create a false sense of wholeness. And the reason this doesn't work is because when you repress something in yourself, you will naturally start to repress it in the other person as well. This is why you have to do the integration work. Where if I'm the narcissist and I keep all of my love and compassion and empathy, and if I keep all that shit down, but then I bring someone into my life who embodies all the parts of my personality that I keep down, what do you think I'm gonna do to them after enough period of time passes? Eventually, they're gonna remind me of all the behaviors that I keep down in myself, and if I don't learn to accept them and myself, I will eventually keep them down as well. So that's why these relationships, like it's kind of romantic in a sense of like, oh, we're coming together and we're becoming whole and isn't that sweet and wonderful? And it's like, no, actually, you are the parts of myself that I fucking hate. And so I'm gonna start hating you. And then what do we do there? It's kind of bullshit. So that's why you have to do the integrative work to make sure that you know what that other person is bringing to you, you know what you're bringing to that other person, you know where you're underdeveloped, you can do the integrative work in yourself, create your own sense of wholeness, and then attract mates from there. So there's that. All right, now for number 3. This one's kind of funny, and this is the one we joke about the most, but let's be honest, the sex is really good in toxic relationships. And let's also be really real about why the sex is good in toxic relationships. I have had a lot of toxic sex in my life, and it is phenomenal. And it has taken a long time in order for me to feel like I'm grounded and integrated in a healthy version of sex. And there's actually tons of reasons for this, and I'm gonna go into a few of them. First one being, when you are unhealthy and you think sex is the thing that is gonna validate you, you think, oh, if I have a bunch of sexual attention from like this kind of person or this kind of person, that must mean I'm good enough. That must mean I'm worthy. That must mean I'm lovable, blah, 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 blah. The amount of effort and attention and care and all sorts of things that you put into seducing that person, getting that person into bed, and ultimately making sure that you gave them a satisfying experience so that you feel like you deserve to be alive. Like, let's be fucking real. Nobody's gonna seduce you quite like somebody who's trying to prove they deserve to exist. And then nobody's gonna fuck you quite like someone who's trying to prove that they deserve to exist. Like, there are reasons that this sex is so good, because the amount of just power and energy and passion and just so much attentiveness is put into it, because if you fuck up, you'll feel like you don't deserve to exist. And that level of pressure, it's like you can't underestimate that shit. And so that's why a lot of these kind of people that are so broken and dysfunctional are so appealing, is because they've put all their skill points into sex. It's because that's where they think that their worthiness is going to come from. That's where they think that their ability to prove that they're worthy of love comes from. So if like you play RPGs and you have all these skill points that you can put into these different things, they just load it all up on sex. That's why they're so fucking good at it. And I was that person for a really long time. I was the kind of guy where I had like multiple girlfriends and they didn't know about each other, and I was just your basic everyday fuckboy. And I would have really good sex. Tons of women wanted to be with me. And then I noticed this really interesting thing that happened is as I started to become more healthy, that stopped happening. And so now I'm going to explain to you, actually, I'll go into that a little bit, but that leads into the 4th reason of losing your identity, which makes all this shit so difficult. But before I go into that, I'm gonna talk about what needs to be done, right? Because it's like, if you are trying to get attention, sexual, romantic, whatever, if you're trying to get that from other people as a way to make yourself feel worthy and good about things, then you need to understand that you are externally sourcing something that should be coming from within yourself. You should be finding which part of you they validate. You should be asking, okay, what is it about having sex or sexual attention or whatever this is? What is this about this that makes me feel good? What is it about this that makes me willing to put so much time and effort and energy into this when I could be doing things that are good for me? Like, what is it about this addiction? Let's be real. What is it about this that keeps me hooked in? When I know somebody likes me, what does that allow me to believe about myself? What emotions does that allow me to feel that I don't normally have access to? Who does it allow me to be? What do I get to think about myself? All these sorts of things. You really got to start asking yourself those questions if you want to break this cycle. Because if you want to break the cycle, you have to self-source all the things that you're getting from sex. Your own validation. And validation is different than people think. A lot of people think validation is like compliments, and validation is not compliments. Because you could compliment yourself all fucking day, but that's not actually going to soothe your need for validation. Because what validation really is, on a practical level, is saying it is okay for this part of myself to exist exactly as it is. And that's different than compliments. Validation is not compliments. Validation is simply saying, I see you, you are allowed to exist exactly as you are, and I'm okay with it. The reason that's different from compliments is because when you validate a part of your personality that holds a lot of pain, what you're saying is it's okay for this pain to exist exactly as it is, right? When someone else validates you and tells you that you're hot or wants to fuck you or something like that, there's no pain to sit with. There's nothing difficult about that. All you do is get the pain flipped and it turns into like oxytocin or dopamine and serotonin or whatever. But when you self-source the validation, all it does is it reminds you how much pain you're in. It doesn't soothe it immediately. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm in a lot of pain. That's why I do these things. It's okay that I'm in a lot of pain. I can love myself while I'm in all this pain. I can nurture myself and help myself heal and recover and blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, the reason I do this is because I'm hurting. So let me accept all the parts that I'm hurting and give them love in a healthier, sustainable way so they won't have to get it from everyone else. Now, that's gonna suck. That is not pleasant. It is so much more pleasant and pleasurable at least on a physical level, to just have someone else be like, oh, you're wonderful, let me fuck you real quick and all your problems will be solved. Except everyone who's ever done that knows that as soon as the sex is over, you're fucking sad. You're like, I don't like this person, actually. This kind of sucked. I wish I had a real connection with someone. I literally had my ultimate sexual fantasy fulfilled. I was seduced by 2 go-go dancers at a festival and then had sex with both of them until the sun came up. And you know what happened the moment it was done? I was fucking sad. I was like, you know what? I don't like these chicks. I wouldn't hang out with them. All this time that I spent trying to get them back here, I don't know a thing about them. I don't like them. I don't care about them. I don't want them in my room anymore. Leave. And that was a huge moment for me when I realized how hollow and dumb these experiences really are. And as you start to integrate and as you start to become more healthy and all these sorts of things, you crave different things and you attract different things. And so now I'm gonna go into number 4, which is the loss of identity. As I've hinted at this before, and the loss of identity is really what keeps people stuck here the most. Because even if you know about everything else, even if you're self-sourcing your validation, even if you've chosen to not go down unhealthy rabbit holes anymore, even if you've chosen all that, there will still be the identity death that comes along with this, and that is the most difficult part, and that is the part that most people will snap back from and not be able to go all the way because they don't even know what they're walking into. And you have to be really committed to be able to walk through something that terrible without even knowing what it is. Most of us need a little bit of prep time and to know what we're walking into. So I'm gonna outline it a little bit for you. When you believe that you are unworthy of love and you don't deserve good things and you're just some fucking dickhead who has to like scrape the bottom of the barrel for whatever love crumbs he can get, then like you simply don't exist in a worldview and in an identity and a reality where you can allow those good things to happen. Like I said before, you'll negatively hallucinate it. So this is why so many people like will get hit on or flirted with by just an amazing, wonderful person. And they'd be like, no, I see you as a friend. And then actually I'm gonna go here and get just horribly mistreated and abused by this fucking schmuck while this person over here would have given me the moon. It's like, we know this happens all the time. And this is a huge part of the reason why is because you will not be interested in healthy things when you see yourself as unhealthy. When you see yourself as unworthy, the healthy things will be boring to you. The healthy things will be kind of mundane and not as exciting because they don't have the flashiness and the passion and the fire of somebody trying to prove their worth, right? Like it's a more grounded, not necessarily subtle, but I guess it is more subtle. It's less intense because there's not like this desperate need behind it, right? It's a little bit more calm and deep and nurturing and stuff that just won't be appealing to you if you're still stuck in the unhealthy mindset. And the distance from the unhealthy mindset to the healthy mindset is much greater than most people give it credit for. And I don't want to scare you, I don't want to make it seem intimidating, but I just want you to know that there is a process to fucking go through that I've actually gone through over the last 10 months. Because I broke up with my ex-girlfriend in January, and that was me acknowledging that like, okay, this is the last time I can attract a relationship from my old worldview. I simply will not allow myself to do that anymore. I cannot do that anymore. That time of my life is done. It's not gonna work. And so I fully committed myself to figuring out who I'd be on the other side of all those negative beliefs so that I stopped attracting trauma bonds and stopped taking good things and making them shitty and stopped doing all the things that I outlined before. Because again, all of this is from my personal experience. I've done everything we've talked about up until this point. And so I made that decision, but I wasn't aware of how hard it was gonna be. I wasn't aware of just how much pain I was gonna have to face and just how long it was gonna take and just how bad it was gonna be. And again, I'm not saying this to scare you. It's the most worthwhile thing I've ever done. You know, like if you would have asked me, you'd be like, hey bro, would you like to spend, 8 to 10 months in excruciating emotional pain? I'd be like, no thanks, I'd prefer not to. Now, if you come to me and you say, well, how about what if you spend 8 to 10 months in intense, excruciating emotional pain, but afterwards you become who you've been trying to become for your entire life? Then suddenly it becomes a little bit more enticing, and I would do it any day of the week. Because I wouldn't want to relive that, and I wouldn't really wish anyone else would have to go through that. However, it was absolutely worth it. The version of myself that I've become now, the things that I'm attracted to now, and the way that I relate to the things that I used to be attracted to is just, I can't believe some of the shit I used to be attracted to. I can't believe some of the people I used to be attracted to. Like they're just holding neon signs that are just like, I'm gonna fuck you up. And I'm just like, okay, yeah, let's do this. That sounds great. But that's what you do when you don't believe you deserve better. And so you have to go through this identity death process where the version of you that is kind of punishing yourself and being a little bit masochistic, if we're being honest. It's like, I don't deserve good things. I deserve the bad things. So I'm going to find people that make me feel the bad things and make me experience the bad things. It's an identity. It's a whole worldview. And in order for you to switch, that identity has to die. So every single part of you that thinks you deserve the bad thing has to get dealt with. And there might be more of them than you realize. And they might be deeper than you realize. And they might be stronger than you realize. And there might be so much more pain associated with this than you realize. But you just keep going. You just keep loving each part of you that comes up and allow this identity death to happen. And as you do that, you will start to realize, you're like, wait a minute, I'm actually not that bad. Like, maybe I can have good things. And then you have a little experience that shows you how much better things can be. And you're like, wait a minute. Things actually can be good. Like, I just had a different experience that the old version of me wouldn't have allowed me to have. And then so that feeds the belief and that feeds the new identity and that creates more experiences which feed the identity and the belief and creates more experiences, and you build momentum in the new direction. And this is what's really important to acknowledge, is that there's only so much pain you have, right? Like, if you are switching from the unhealthy version to the healthy version, you have a finite amount of pain. There's only so much in there. And so each time you face some, each time you release some, each time you let some go and remind yourself that you deserve good things, that shit's gone. Like, it's not gonna come back. And the more you express, the more you get out, the more your tank drains. And then if you're filling your mind up with the positive things, you're literally expressing all the old negative shit, getting it out of your body, out of your system, telling yourself good, positive things and creating positive experiences. So that means your tank is filling back up with positive emotions and positive ideas, which all of a sudden you start to act in a new way, and it builds momentum on itself, and it grows and it grows and it grows. And next thing you know, you can hardly even remember what the old life was like. Like I said, it took me about 10 months. Realistically, it took me about 8 months to get through the hardest parts of it. And so for the last 2 months, I've been kind of like out of it, but still like, yeah, okay, that I remember. But now I can barely remember. Now it seems like some kind of bizarre dream experience that I went through that doesn't seem that congruent with who I am as a person. So the identity death really does kind of suck, and it's the part that's likely to pull you back, because identities don't die easily. Identities are the part that really just, they want you to feel safe. Your identity is like, these are the rule books. This is the rule you gave me. This is who you told me you are. This is who you told me you're allowed to be. This is what you told me was allowed in and what's not allowed in. Your identity is only doing what you told it to do. And you told it to do that because you thought that was the best thing. And you told it that if it stopped doing that, that it would put you in danger and bad things would happen. So as a result, it thinks that if I let go, I'm in danger and bad things are gonna happen. So it's your job to allow that to happen. To be like, yes, I know that if you let this go, you think we're gonna be in danger, you think bad things will be happening, but I want you to know that I'll be there for you. I will take care of you. I will make sure that whatever bad things happen are taken care of. And if you say that and you mean it and you genuinely take care of all the parts of you that are afraid, you will start to identify as the new thing. You will start to attract better people. You will start to be a better person yourself. You will start to allow better experiences into your life, and the old shit will stop making sense to you, and it'll start to be hilarious. So I know this is big, I know this is complex, there's a million different little rabbit holes we could go down, so many other things we could go deep on, but this is the broad overview of 5 reasons why you're addicted to toxic relationships. If you want help with this, let me know, I'd be happy to coach you through it. And if you have any deeper questions or specifics or anything you want brought up, let me know, I can go deeper into any of these. But I hope this helps, I hope you see yourself in this. I love you, I'll see you next time. A book that you could do.